behavioral and mental health issues showing up more often in Colorado schools.
All of these things they won't know how to verbalize, and this is why we see them act out.
How mental health experts say families can step in to help curb these post-pandemic problems.
They spent over $100 million building out the campus, and then it costs around $25 million a year just to keep things moving.
And helping the homeless by taking cues from Texas, what Aurora City leaders learned in the Lone Star State.
First tonight, reports of behavioral and mental health issues in our school-age kids have risen dramatically following the pandemic.
And today we learned the statewide Safe to Tell reporting program for potential safety issues in schools saw an 89% increase in the month of September from the month before. As Denver 7's Rob Harris shows us, mental health experts warn we could be seeing this for years to come.
As adults, we think that maybe children aren't aware of this, but children can be aware of this at a very primal and, an energy level.
Dr. Tiamo Kitsango-Piri is just one of several childhood psychologists who tell us the stresses of the pandemic and the world around us are having profound effects on our kids.
They understand that there's a level of stress in the family, there's a level of stress in the adults taking care of them. So all of these things, they won't know how to verbalize, and this is why we see them act out.
The impacts of the pandemic on our students' well-being are being intensely felt, not only here at home, but across the country. Check out these numbers from the National Center of Education Statistics. 87% of public schools reported negative impacts to students' socio-emotional development from the pandemic in the last school year. Nearly half reported rowdiness outside of the classroom and acts of disrespect toward teachers and staff. And more than half saw an increase in classroom disruptions caused by student behavior.
They might yell at their friends, they might, hurt or poke their friends or do these things that are, disruptive and just really acting out behaviors in order to communicate to the outside world what they're feeling on the inside.
Dr. Kitsango-Piri says our students have missed out on important life lessons and opportunities, especially our youngest kids, who weren't able to meet others their age and learn how to interact outside of their families. She says a good place to start now is showing patience and modeling some of those missed lessons for them.
Parents really can and should lead by example, maybe helping them brainstorm ways that they can cope with it, how they can take care of themselves, who they can talk to. When you have these big feelings, who do you think is a good person that you can talk to? And then helping them figure those things out together.
For Denver 7, I'm Rob Harris.
And tonight, we are taking a 360 in-depth look at the issues the Denver Public School District has with its services geared towards children with behavioral issues or special needs.
We're going to start off with how the pandemic impacted those programs. DPS has something called compensatory services. Those are programs to make up for what students missed during the pandemic to prevent regression. The district set aside more than $12 million to fund them. But a report by chalkbeat.org in May says DPS left it up to each school to determine how and when to deliver those services. And records show that many schools had yet to request any of that funding at that time.
And digging even deeper, a recent state education investigation found that DPS violated the rights of children with disabilities who attend specialized programs. It also determined that black boys were 4.5 times more likely to be placed in affective needs classrooms. The investigation also found the district failed to thoroughly evaluate the boys before sending them to the program and then failed to properly monitor their progress. Now, I looked back into our archives and the DPS superintendent addressed this in his September 21st newsletter, saying the district plans to dismantle all oppressive systems that are hindering our students. However, he did not say when.
DPS Superintendent Alex Marrero says the affective needs classrooms are just one of 4 persistent and enduring systems of oppression, he says, that he hopes to dismantle. And his new plan to deal with classrooms was supposed to be submitted to the State Board of Education today. And we reached out to DPS to see if that plan was submitted, but we have not heard back yet. Now, the second system Marrero identified is one that oversees students who qualify for assistance under a federal disability law. He says there are more than 500 students who qualify, but only one specialist monitoring the whole program. Now, the other 2 systems of concern deal with the size of the district's central office and the role of the school board.
It is time to start screening our kids as young as 8 for anxiety. That is the recommendation from a group of health experts. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force also says kids ages 12 to 18 should also be screened for depression. Now, I checked the CDC website and the numbers show depression and anxiety have increased in children, as have substance use and suicide. And the big takeaway here, these recommendations are for all kids, not just those showing signs of a mental health condition.
Aurora City leaders are now back from San Antonio, Texas, to learn how that city and how Houston address homelessness. They toured San Antonio's Haven for Hope. This is a campus for 1,500 people. It provides support services and stable housing while those people search for something more permanent. And Aurora Councilman Juan Marcano says it's a vast difference in how much San Antonio and Houston spend on their programs.
So it's a different approach. San Antonio's ends up being much more expensive as a result, since it requires a lot more infrastructure. So I think they spent over $100 million building out the campus, and then it costs around $25 million a year just to keep things moving. So it's really, really pricey compared to Houston's approach.
The councilman says he is optimistic these trips will give them some insight on what to do in Aurora.
And for anyone in Denver experiencing homelessness, the city is now accepting applications for its Basic Income Project. And this program will give cash to 820 people or families. Some will get a monthly stipend, others a lump sum. And the Colorado Coalition for Homeless will then track how people use the money. Applications will be accepted through November 3rd.
Nearly 70% of small businesses in the U.S. closed during the pandemic. And the surviving ones now say inflation could be what shuts them down for good. And this evening, I read the latest Small Business Recovery Report by American Express. It shows 4 of 5 small businesses believe they can weather a recession, but they wouldn't be able to turn a profit during the time. And more than half expect this to continue through most of 2023. Well, Stephen Weiler, an economics professor at Colorado State University, says inflation takes a greater toll on small business than it does the big corporations.
We're not keeping up with inflation, which means effectively we're all getting somewhat poorer every month that we get a paycheck. Problem is that small businesses depend on their suppliers, and their suppliers are increasing their prices along with inflation.
And businesses surveyed in that report said they would have to raise prices to stay afloat or renegotiate deals with suppliers to cut costs.
New tonight, the city of Golden has voted to adopt what's called the SAFER grant to help hire more firefighters. Leaders say there has been a 67% increase in emergency calls in the past 7 years. So to help, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security will grant the city money to help pay all wages and benefits for up to 7 firefighters for 3 years.
President Biden will be in Colorado tomorrow. He's coming here to designate Camp Hale in Eagle County as a national monument. Now, the camp near Leadville serves as a training site for the 10th Mountain Division, which fought in the mountains of Italy during World War II. And Denver 7 will have coverage of the president's visit throughout the day tomorrow.
And tonight we are learning more about the cyber attacks on the websites of major airports yesterday, including DIA. A Russian-speaking hacking group known as Killnet is claiming responsibility for the attack. It is unclear if they have ties to the Russian government, but they recently began targeting organizations in NATO countries. They were able to take down the airport websites using what's known as DDoS attack. Cybersecurity experts say it's alarming that the attack worked because it's one of the oldest methods around, becoming popular in the early 90s.
An entire 6th grade football team now out for the season.
We can't play anymore. We got suspended from the league.
Give them a fair chance to defend themselves.
Why they say the penalty is unfair.
Our fans who are Comcast subscribers, they want Altitude back on the air. They want to watch their teams.
Plus, another effort to end the Altitude Comcast blackout. Hear about the new campaign to get the games back on the air.